So Romania has quite a good development of the so-called prosumers group in society. These are people who produce electricity in their households with the help of solar panels, for example. It was really a big hit even 2 years ago. It was very prominent, this industry, and now it continues its development. And I know that recently conditions have been changed somehow. So now it's not enough just to have the solar panels, but you also have to have batteries. And I want to ask you, as energy expert, to explain what is going on, what is the current state of affairs in Romania with regards to prosumers in terms of legislation and other issues.
So yes, this is one area that has moved really well in Romania in the past 2 years. But again, it goes back to the fact that it's why this segment has moved better than all the others. It's because the state fails to act and to deliver on the projects that it has announced and committed to deliver, and it is unable to finalize projects that should have been finalized, and some of them are completed 80-90%, like we have hydro projects which are in that state. So it's the little guys, the normal people being fed up with waiting for a solution to come from the state. And in the context of the energy crisis of 2022, you know, people, but also with the help of energy experts. I was one of those experts who said, don't wait for the government to help you and to deliver projects that it is unable to deliver for more than 10 years. We're waiting for the Chernivtsi, reactor 3 and 4 nuclear power plant, right? Since 2007. That's a project that's not happening. We are waiting for, let's say, the pumped storage project at Tarnica. It's a project that we have been talking in Romania since the 80s, so 30, 40 years, and it's not happening. So I think it's a very bad decision to wait for the government to provide the cheap electricity. So that's why many people took matters into their own hands and invested some out of their own pocket, others with the help of this government subsidies that are in place, and they have equipped their homes with solar panels. Yes, and that is why we have seen this phenomenal rise in the installed capacity, which now equates the power of two nuclear reactors installed at Chernobyl. So Unit 1 and 2 have 1,400 megawatts installed capacity, and the aggregated power of the prosumers, installed capacity at prosumer level, was this summer already 1,500 megawatts. So you see, it's also, I think, something that has developed because the other solutions or the projects that should have helped are not there, in time to help you when there is an energy crisis. So now this segment has developed too fast. Again, it has caught our decision makers not ready, and they say that they cannot deal with the rising power of the consumers because they don't have the balancing capacity, right, to integrate this installed capacity present at the levels of the prosumers. So now they have made it mandatory for the prosumers and the next installations to be equipped with storage at each project, so individual level. While we have to emphasize the fact that the same obligation does not extend to the large, let's say, renewable power plants, so solar farms or wind farms. There is no legal obligation for them to be equipped with storage. So this creates sort of a discrimination and not a leveling playing field, because there is one set of rules for the renewable projects of industrial scale, and there is another set of rules which requires storage for the small scale, let's say, renewable investors, because that's what prosumers are. They are investors in renewable energy at residential level, right? So not industrial level, as you know, with the projects that sell electricity on the exchange and so on and so forth. So this is where we're at, and the government again was caught unprepared, and that's why these attempts to change the legislation to make it mandatory for them um, to be equipped with storage. But this adds to the cost of installing and running and exploiting such systems. Then there is also talk of the government wanting to increase, collection from VAT, and the fact that they will up the level of VAT for the solar panels starting with next year. So prosumers will face additional expenses if that happens. On the VAT front, because it will increase if they pass this law, and then also with the additional installation and equipment of storage for their home installed solar panels.
Okay, you like to criticize the state, but in fact, prosumers 2 years ago were free from taxes, if I'm not mistaken, and that was one of the reasons that this sector grew so fast. And on the other hand, the state is also having a program which supports people buying photovoltaic utilities. What can you say about these policies of encouragement of the sector which come from the Romanian state?
Well, this is one good thing that the Romanian government has done, in the sense that initially it did not, let's say, raise unnecessary obstacles in the face of the prosumers, but which they are trying to change periodically because they want to raise money. They try to identify new sources of revenues, and this is why, let's say, the VAT for new solar power installations might go up next year. But I don't think the government itself was prepared to this huge interest from the market. And the interest from the market came because of the energy crisis and the price explosion in 2022. Uh, because absent the war in Ukraine and the energy crisis that year, it would have developed, but at a much slower pace, because many people got frightened, rightfully so, in 2022. And many of them installed and made these investments not with government subsidies, not with the help of the government program, because we have had cases in which, let's say, applications that were submitted in 2019, 3 years later, were not processed. So the government, yes, offers subsidies, but on the other hand, moves very slowly with processing these applications. So there were people who waited for 3.5 years for their dossiers, files to be approved in order to make the investment and to equip their homes with solar panels. So much of this, let's say, explosion in the segment of the prosumers is due to the middle class, the people who had themselves the means to invest in such specifically solar power installations, because the prosumer phenomenon in Romania is 90%, more than 90%, driven by solar panels. So not micro wind installations or biomass or you see, so installations. It's solar panels, so it's PV.
Okay, if we speak more about the state in its energy policy, there were recent statements by the energy minister, Mr. Burduja, who complained that the electricity price has been very high in our region in the last months, while in Western Europe, and in fact in whole of Europe until Austria, maybe it tends to be much lower. And he also said, if I'm not mistaken, that some actions would be looked forward even at European level, because it's a common interest of Bulgaria, Greece, Romania, etc. Uh, what do you know about this? What can be done in this case, and what will be done in your view so that prices of energy somehow become normal?
Well, I think the problem that was exposed and with which we have struggled this summer and might struggle again this upcoming winter, so the fact that we have seen higher prices in this part of Europe, southeastern Europe, as opposed to the more normal prices in northern Europe, western Europe, even let's say central northern Europe, so Poland, Baltic states, indicates that, let's say, this part of Europe, southeastern Europe, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, are the countries which are, let's say, are the weakest link in Europe's energy market, integrated energy market, right? So these are the countries that have delayed the reforms. These are the countries that have planned investments that did not materialize. So it's not only because our minister wants to put this on Ukraine and say, oh, we have higher prices because of the war in Ukraine, and that's why we see these higher prices. But then there are other neighbors of Ukraine, Hungary, Poland, Slovakia, right, which did not experience so high energy prices. So again, this leads me to the conclusion that these higher energy prices are the result of these three countries' failure to make the necessary investments uh, at on time, right? Because we are talking about Chernovoda 3 and 4. So two reactors which would have added 1,400 megawatts to the existing um, installed capacity in Romania, which would have been of great help in this whole situation, which could have covered Moldova's entire, let's say, energy consumption, which could have provided electricity to Ukraine or could have covered the peak demand in Romania during the summer. So our societies, our economies are evolving and are moving towards greater electrification. We use more electricity, due to all the devices that we use. Specifically, if we see heat waves like we have seen in Romania this summer, temperatures rising above 40 degrees Celsius, right? Something unseen in this part of the world. People will use more, the air conditioning devices. In Bulgaria, I know during winter people use air conditioning devices, but on the heat function to warm their homes. So in Bulgaria, the ACs are used for heating homes during winter. So we have new devices, new uses of these devices, and the situation this summer with the higher prices point to a deficit in production in installed capacity. So the power generation is not enough, even with the exchanges that we have, because Romania imports a lot of electricity from Bulgaria, with whom we have the highest interconnection capacity. But it's not to cover the peak moments, when demand is at peak. So this again points to domestic failure to deliver on, let's say, projects such as the natural gas-fired power plant at Mintia, which they started and which should have been completed in 2020, and we are now in 2024. And the minister tells us that we should wait a little bit more, and it will be ready and put in operation by the end of this year, by the beginning of next year. We have been hearing this for 4 years. The nuclear power projects at Chernovoda, I mean the reactor 3 and 4, are not moving ahead. And we cannot have a date, or we cannot believe that the date that they have in mind or that they propose, for the fact that we'll have unit 3 by 2023 2030, we cannot trust it, because they've been saying that since 2007. So that's why I'm saying, and imagine what the situation would have been like without the prosumers, which have added 1,500 megawatts of new installed capacity at individual level, so residential level mostly in Romania, right? So again, it's the failure of the state to finalize the projects that it has in works for years. Some of them, should have been already operational, and they are not. So before before criticizing the European energy model or energy market, I would look at what these countries should have done and didn't do. And the fault lies first and foremost at the domestic level. Only after you can show the European partners and to Brussels that you have done everything you could do, you have invested, you have reformed, you have implemented all the reforms, then you can go and ask Brussels, give us more money because we need more interconnection capacity, or we want to build an additional line between this country and that country, or we need, because Brussels has allowed subsidies. Romania has granted subsidies and is a country, one of the European countries that still grants subsidies at the consumption level. And the subsidy scheme did not last only for the most difficult period, 2022. It's valid in operation today. Romanians pay, industrial consumers, residential consumers, they pay a subsidized price for electricity and will continue to do so until April the 1st, 2025. So it's not like Romania did not make use of state intervention. Romania intervened, Romania re regulated the prices. And if other European countries have dropped or have made this intervention short term for the duration of the crisis, and since they have gone back to, let's say, market prices, Romania have not did not go to the market prices, not yet. We're still under this subsidized regime.
Okay, I want to ask you also about your evaluation of the ongoing just transition process in Romania. It has different components. One thing is that the closure of certain jobs related to mines and thermal power plants should be somehow linked to the opening of new jobs, also hopefully qualified workers. And there is economic aspect, there is a social aspect, given that people who lose their job are expected to receive some funds, either for well-being or for requalification. And there is also aspect related to new technology, somehow to modernization of firms or production plants or other entities. So how do you appreciate the ongoing just transition in Romania now? How successful is it, or how much problems it faces?
Well, Romania embarked on this road unwillingly and late. Again, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece are the countries that have resisted coal phase out and have, dragged this as long as they could until they couldn't. So then they embraced this path unwillingly, closing, let's say, coal-fired power plants. And the EU has been generous. There is a lot of money to be spent. Again, Romania was late, a late starter in accessing this money, and I would have to look myself in order to be able to provide you with a more detailed reply on how are the programs under the Just Transition Fund going. But what I can tell you, the start in Romania was late. So Poland was much more ahead of us, let's say at the level of 2020, in accessing this money, drafting the strategies, bringing together the stakeholders, and identifying what it is that they want to do for the region. So Romania was behind Poland in this aspect as well. In terms of social aspect, well, the social aspect is manipulated in Romania by the politicians, including the Minister Burduja himself, who, instead of telling the truth to the people in those, let's say, coal dependent regions, that this is a thing of the past, it will be closed down. No, he, out of the desire not to lose votes because it's an election year, has reopened some coal-fired units, and has said that we want to promote the coal mining, and we want to extend the life of these coal-fired assets. So, not telling the truth to the people affected by this process, just transition and decarbonization, and selling illusions. This is what our politicians, specifically the minister, the current minister, has been doing. And I think this uh, this is this serves no one, and it is not helpful for those people. It's much more honest to tell them the truth and to help them access those money, build new projects, reskill or acquire the new skills for for a greener economy, than tell them lies about how you will extend the use of coal in those regions just to get their votes in the upcoming elections.
Okay, I know that in Romania there has been sometimes discourse that international capital or global capital corporations are somehow privileged, including by the Romanian state, with regards to the national autochthonous capital. Can Is there such a discourse or such a reality when the just transition is taken into considerations, in the sense that maybe firms which are owned by Western European companies or people maybe are more participate more in the just transition than the or win more from it than the local Romanian companies?
I wouldn't say so, and why I wouldn't say so? Because let's say the coal sector, coal-fired power plants, it's in entirely in the hands of the Romanian state. There are no private companies which are exploiting, let's say, coal-fired generators in Romania. There haven't been any, so it's entirely state-owned companies. And I would say that actually the Romanian state is much more busy um, uh, developing state aids schemes, so support schemes to the state owned enterprises than in helping the private sector and foreign entities, um, let's say, access funding. So I would say that if someone is discriminated in Romania, it's the foreign companies, because the state has a vested interest in helping the state-owned companies. And let me tell you that the energy sector in Romania, it's 80% state-owned. 80. 80. So, if anything, the Romanian state is failing and is not doing enough to craft and to devise the policies that would incentivize the private investors to put their money into into new projects. It spends most of its time in trying to help the state-owned energy companies. So no, it's actually failing on the front of creating the policies and the level playing field for all the, let's say, participants in the energy sector. It's clearly favoring the state-owned energy companies, even in the way it distributes the money, including the European funding.
Talking about state companies in energy, Hidroelectrica has been a very big company, and it was launched some time ago at the Stock Exchange of Bucharest, and it is said to have contributed significantly to the rise of the volume, and maybe also attracting some capitals with regards to the rising volume of exchange on that bourse. However, I want to ask, how do you evaluate this, uh, let's say, minority shares privatization, if I may say, or this listing of the Hidroelectrica? What did it change for the company, for the Romanian state, for the, if you wish, investors or citizens?
Well, Hidroelectrica is not just any company, it's the crown jewel, of all the state-owned energy enterprises, right? So it's the most valuable state-owned company in the energy sector. I think this privatization of a minority stake in Hidroelectrica is a good thing, because it brings more transparency, more scrutiny, but the state remains the majority shareholder. So even now, you see, there is this discussion of how the European Union does not want to approve, let's say, some money. The payment through the National Recovery and Resilience Plan, because Romania failed to deliver on the reform front, because it failed to modernize and to ensure that at the helm of these companies, state-owned energy companies, are competent people, so not named based on their political affiliation to this party or that party, but based on expertise. And it failed to do so. So now we have around a billion a billion euro that is held up by the European Union and might not be transferred to Romania because Romania did not ensure this transparent governance and competent governance and didn't implement the reform in specifically in the state-owned energy companies. Yeah. Now, the fact that Hidroelectrica has a minority stake listed, I think, is a good development because it brings more scrutiny. And because you have also, let's say, individual stakeholders and owners, even if minority owners, who can have an insight, but their say is little because if it's 20%, you don't have much influence, and the decisions are made by the majority stakeholder still, right? So it's still the state that will dictate what happens in Hidroelectrica, and what projects will be implemented and invested in, and so not the little investors, but it's a good first step in the right direction.
There has been a lot of hype about American investment in Romanian energy sector. One example has been the capabilities for offshore extraction of natural gas in the Black Sea. In the other case is probably the one related to the so-called modular nuclear plants. I know that there have been problems in both cases. Could you tell us what is the current state of these projects related to both exploitation of natural gas in the Black Sea and the modular nuclear plants?
So let's talk about the natural gas in the Black Sea. So an important step forward was made last year. So in 2023, when in June, so in the middle of the year last year, OMV Petrom, which is the operator, main company and title holder there, has made the final investment decision (FID). This is the most significant step in any investment because before the FID, it's just collecting data, putting the right legislation, legal framework in place, doing seismic work, mapping, and so on and so forth. But once a project receives the FID, this means the green light. This means that the project is happening. So from that point of view, we have this certainty because OMV made the final investment decision in the middle of last year. So now what they are telling us is that sometime around 2026, 2027, they want to see the first gas. So that means that they need 3 to 4 years, you know, for all the, let's say, contractors to put everything in place for the gas molecules to start flowing and to be fed into the Romanian natural gas system. So on that front, things have moved forward. And this is why I explained why this FID is very important. It's not like a simple authorization or like a permit. No, it signifies the 100% commitment of the project owners to go forward when they actually spend money to develop for production. So this is happening, uh, and we should see the first results in 2000. I would say more 2027, because in Romania everything uh, lasts longer, and you rarely have a surprise for something to be done quicker, rather, for a project to have a delay. So I would say more likely 2027 than 2026. Uh, but so on the front of the small modular reactor, so this is a project indeed with the involvement of the American company NuScale. They have the technology that the Romanians would like to implement at the selected site. The selected site is Doicești. It's the location of a former coal-fired power plant which has been dismembered, but you still have the connection to the electricity grid that's in place there. So in a way, that has weighed in their decision significantly to locate the project there. However, it's moving also at a slower pace because there is significant, let's say, resistance in Romanian society with respect to any American involvement in the energy sector. So this is quite strange because we seem to be having a quite strong undercurrent in Romanian society and also in Romanian state institutions who want to derail these American investments in the Romanian energy sector, right? Because if these investments do not happen, then Romania will be at the mercy of electricity imports from other countries and will not be standing on its own 2 feet. So let's say the pro-Russian forces, which we have in the form of the party of Diana Shoshaka, who has this very pro-Russian stance. I mean, openly pro-Russian. Um, so you would see always this alignment in their public discourse. People who were anti-vaxxers, who support Russia and are against supporting Ukraine, are also the people who do not want any American investments in the Romanian economy. So they are the same guys, the same tribe, the same group of people. Yeah, but let's say the more progressive part of Romanian society does want to see American investments in Romania take place. Now, with respect to the Black Sea, you see that that is no longer an American investment or a project with American involvement because Exxon withdrew and sold its stake um, uh, to state-owned Romgaz, which is a national company, state-owned, right? So even in the case of the Black Sea natural gas project, Neptune Deep, we no longer talk about an American investment. It ended once the ownership was transferred to Romgaz. Now we'll see if Romania is able to see this SMR, small modular reactor plant at Doicești, come to fruition and materialize it, or this will be another derailed American investment and subsequently Russian win in Romania's economy, in the sense that an American investment not made. I hope they will succeed with this project. But there is a track record, significant track record, that we cannot neglect of American investments, like Chevron with shale gas, like Exxon with the Neptune Deep in the Black Sea, natural gas, offshore natural gas, which make me very cautious. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and I would like to see this project come to life. But Romania is an unpredictable country, so anything can happen.
Since the beginning of October, there is an LNG terminal in Alexandroupolis, Greece, which is connected to Bulgaria, and from Bulgaria, via Bulgaria, it can reach the natural gas can reach Romania, Moldova, Ukraine, Hungary, Slovakia, etc. At the same time, it is expected that after the end of this year, the last Russian natural gas which transits Ukraine no longer does it. So, can you somehow make a prognosis how the natural gas map of the region, especially southeastern Europe, will look like in the near future?
Sure. So I would say that the crisis in 2022 resulted into something positive in the sense that our region, Southeastern Europe, managed to significantly break through the monopoly of the Russian natural gas imports and finally started these, let's say, west-east gas flows with the help of this LNG terminal in Alexandroupolis through the Trans-Balkan line, so gas that is reaching now Moldova, like non-Russian gas. So this is a positive development. However, some residual gas transit through Ukraine remains in place. And this agreement that governs this transit of gas, Russian gas through Ukraine, will end. I mean, it covers only until the end of this year. The expectation normally would be for this transit to stop. And the Ukrainian side has said that it has no intention to continue this transit. However, we have seen a willingness, on the other hand, it's a little bit strange for me and I don't understand it. So, a willingness from the side of Kiev to find alternative solutions, well, proposed usually by Hungary or Slovakia, who would like to continue this Ukrainian gas transit through Ukraine, and they have come up with this artificial trick. They say, okay, we'll take ownership of this gas, also. As they did with the proposal for oil, we'll take the ownership of oil at the Ukrainian Belarusian border. So the gas that transits Ukraine is no longer Russian, but it belongs to us. I mean, it's Hungarian gas or it's Slovakian gas. This is a trick, an artifact. So it's like an artificial mechanism that they came up with in order to kind of circumvent the EU sanctions and the well, not the EU sanctions, because the sanctions apply only for oil but not for gas. Uh, but this is a trick. It's like an invention that will allow them to continue receiving natural gas from Russia, but through Ukraine. Now, my personal opinion as an expert is that Ukraine should shut this natural gas transit through its territory. And I do not think I mean, these are countries, Hungary and Slovakia, that do not support Ukraine anyway. They resist any support, financial or military, from. They resist it in both the EU and NATO. So I do not understand why Kiev is playing nice with two countries that do not want to help Ukraine either way. So they will lose nothing if they shut down this transit once and for all. Moreover, they have a legitimate argument because we have war going on in their country. So it's a force majeure event. It's legitimate. Um, and this, I mean, shutting down this natural gas transit through Ukraine would also deprive the pro-Russian and anti-Ukrainian lobby in Hungary and Slovakia of their main argument that, oh, no, 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 we cannot help Ukraine because we depend on the Russian gas that goes through Ukraine. But if this gas stops flowing through Ukraine, this argument is gone. So, as an expert, I think it would serve Kiev's interests better if they stop, if they halt the transit of Russian gas through Ukraine at the end of December.
Um, can we end with this more general question? It looks like there are American, Western European, and maybe Russian vision for the energy balances or development in the region. Is it right to ask who is winning in this situation after 2 years after the war in Ukraine? And is the win really durable, or will there be more changes to these geopolitical balances between these three major blocks?
I think the crisis of 2022 inflicted significant cracks in the Russian monopoly, energy monopoly of our region, and has managed to bring some successes in the sense that it has moved Germany, who was very, linked to Russian gas. It has managed to move Germany away from dependency on Russian gas, and this is a big win for, let's say, the American and Western European influence. However, there are countries, smaller countries, that remain that remain dependent, and this is a willing dependence that they choose. It's their own will. They choose to remain dependent on Russia, and I'm talking about Hungary. I'm talking about Slovakia. Um, which means that Russia's hold is not over our region as long as we have EU member states, NATO member states, Turkey, for instance, that also tries to have it both ways, to sit on both stools, right? Um, and to be part of NATO, but also to um, engage economically with Russia for profits. So I would say that it's a partial win. I would say it's a big win for the West, but it's not, a definitive win, because we need to close this dependence of NATO member countries and European countries on Russia. And here are the weakest links, and the ones that I have mentioned: Hungary, Slovakia, Greece, Turkey.
Is it correct to describe the relations between these three blocks in the energy geopolitics in the region as competitors only, or do they have also some kind of cooperation at certain levels?
I think any cooperation that existed has ended in February 2022. uh, Maybe some things still, pass through despite the sanctions. Electronics, which still end up in rockets that hit Ukraine and that are launched by Russia. But I think the era of the West's cooperation with Russia has ended, and it is a chapter that has closed, and it is evident by the fact that this place that was left empty on the Russian market, so in the Russian economy, was immediately occupied by China. China now fills that space, provides those I don't know, those goods, sometimes services, but mostly goods, on the Russian market that were delivered previously, or were provided by Western companies. India is buying Russian oil and will buy from anyone who has cheap oil for sale. Turkey, again, Turkey, India, China, Iran, these are the countries that are helping um, Russia survive the sanctions regime. Without their help, Russia would have been already in a much, much more dire situation.